So let's actually sit for a moment with feet together, knees apart, and feet wide enough or feet far enough away from you so that you can sit on your sitting bones without having to use your hands behind you. Good, and then just a simple movement with the breath, like inhaling, little spinal extension, send the ribs forward, let the gaze lift. And then exhale, rounding, sending the spine back, let the head drop forward. Inhale. Little spinal extension, exhale, rounding. Inhale. And exhale. Two more on your own. Find a cadence that feels good. Letting the breath almost move the body. And then coming back to center. Good. And then I'm just going to turn towards my right leg, either one hand on shin, one hand on the floor. Same thing, right? Just a little bit. It's going to change the movement. Exhale to flex. Inhale, extend. Exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Last time, inhale. And exhale. Good. And just pause for a moment in center. Noticing your breath. And other side. So we are asking for a lot. We're asking for rotation, flexion, extension, movement, breath. So make the movement as small or as slow as you need to. Rounding as the breath presses out. Extending as the breath moves in. Again, let the body move the breath. Doing 3 on this side. Listening to your breath, listening to your body. And then coming back to center. And then crossing your legs. Finding your seat. Let's open the eyes for a moment. Long through your spine, right? And notice, do you have to sit higher to feel supported? I'm going to, again, from that long spine, right, long through the center of the body, turning, looking over the left shoulder. And not so much about the body movement, but looking around that left side of the room, maybe even finding an object to identify the weight, the color, the texture, maybe a thought or feeling about that object. Just noticing. Coming back to center. And turning the head to the right. Again, eyes open. Taking in the light of the room, maybe another object. Space around you, behind you. Noticing your breath as you do. And coming back to center, using your peripheral vision to take in the room. So wide scope of vision, almost seeing the sides of the room, moving towards the back of the room, and then closing your eyes. And feeling the movement that's happening in your body from the breath, the movement of the rib cage, the belly, even the throat, mouth. Noticing the cadence of your breath, the rhythm. Noticing anything else, tightness, dullness, warm, cool, any sensation in the body. Palms together in front of your heart. Good, and first breath, let's make the sound ha. H-A, long sound with the long exhale. Inhaling and exhale. Ha. Second breath, we'll make the sound ha, H-A, and vu, V-U. And they'll each two sounds, so they'll be shorter to make room. Inhaling. Ha. Vu. The third breath. Ha. Vu. Ha. Again, each one will be a little shorter. Inhaling. Ha. Vu. Ha. And after your next exhale, inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slight pause at the top of the breath, softening around that suspension of the breath. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, slight pause, softening around that emptiness of the breath. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pausing, soften. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause. Softening as much as you can, even if that means there's a little breath moving. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slight pause. And exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slight pause. And relax the breath, let the breath find a rhythm. Okay, so let's start on our backs. So maybe have your blocks handy. Sorry, my dad's caretaker for the day. Okay, so I'm just gonna have the blocks handy. Laying on my back, knees bent, feet flat on the floor, arms alongside the body. And I'm just gonna play with a little bit of movement in the pelvis. Right, so first, for a moment, letting the weight of the body really drop. Just feeling what that feels like. the back of the pelvis. Notice if there's more weight on one side, right side, left side. Is there more weight on one foot? Or notice my right foot, there's more weight in my inner heel and instep of the foot, and my left foot, there's more weight in my big toe. Just different. Noticing the rib cage, the way that it's settling, sinking into the ground. The pressure on the ribs, the shape of that, the rib cage on the floor. Back of the head. And is there more weight on one side? Okay. So now, little movement. I'm gonna roll down the length of my sacrum towards my sitting bones and tailbone, which is going to lift my lower back off of the floor. Again, listening to your body. Sometimes a little bit of movement creates a lot of sensation. So move within a range of sensation that feels doable or easy. And then I'm going to roll up the length of my sacrum, right? Letting the kind of mid upper sacrum, lower back start to sink into the floor. Tailbone and sitting bones get light. And then rolling down the length of the sacrum from upper, middle, lower, sitting bones towards the floor. Then I'm in a little spinal extension. And again, little posterior tilt or spinal flexion. One more time, anterior tilt and posterior tilt. Let's actually do one more, aware of the breath. So as you anteriorly tilt and you feel the lower back lift off the floor and the weight shift towards the sitting bones, notice what happens to the rest of the spine. Right? My chin is drawing towards my chest. And then as I roll up the length of my sacrum, lower back, it's heavy, my chin starts to lift. Right? My weight is shifted headward. And come back to center. Okay. So now I'm going to play with pelvis is flat on the floor. So if you think of that triangular shape of the sacrum flat on the floor, somewhat flat because it's round, and then I'm going to take the tailbone, the bottom point of that triangle towards the right, and it's really slow. Right, so coming back to center. And slowly turn the pelvis to the right. Right, as if turning a dial to the right. And then slowly come back to center. And then I'm going to slowly turn the dial to the left. Slow. So even think about a little bit of movement, maybe even a quarter of an inch. Pause. Move a little more. Pause. Move a little more. Pause. And then slowly come back to center with that same cadence. Move. Pause. Move. Pause. Move and pause. Just settle for a moment. Let the weight of your body sink back, settle back. One more time to the right. Little movement, quarter of an inch. Pause. Move a little more. Pause. Let your weight settle. Let yourself settle back. And move a little more and pause. The pause becomes very important. That's when we get to kind of shift the patterns in the nervous system that are informing the tissue. One more movement and pause. And then slowly come back to center. So it's almost like a little tiny tail, like you're wagging your tail back and forth, super slow. And then come back towards center, a little bit of movement and pause. Let all the tissue soften and relax. And then as you move again, notice the initiation, let it be quite small, and then drop back into a softness, a releasing, an unwinding. And again, a little bit of movement, less effort. And then settle and pause and center. And a little movement to the left, movement and pause. Movement and pause. Notice the initiation. Is it fast? Can you slow it down? Movement, pause, sink, settle, soften. Movement, slow, steady, including the whole body. Soften back, settle back, pause. And then slowly come back towards center. A little movement, sink. Slow, steady movement, settle. Slow, steady movement, soften. Slow, steady movement, sink back. Just take a moment, feeling maybe hands on your belly, just letting your belly fill with the in-breath and empty with the out-breath. Feeling how the bones start to settle into the ground and how that just allowing the weight of the bones to move into the tissue, as if compressing the tissue against the floor. It's small. Okay. So now I'm going to take my right ankle onto my left knee. And I'm going to do those same movements again, just putting the blocks to the side. So again, I'm going to do my anterior tilt. So I'm rolling down the length of my sacrum towards my sitting bones and tailbone. And then slowly rolling up the length of my sacrum. Lower sacrum, middle, upper sacrum, lower back. Again, think about that rhythm that we found before, right? A little bit of movement, settle back. A little bit of movement, sink back. A little bit of movement, soften the hips, the belly, the groin, the jaw. A little bit of movement, soften the front hip, the buttocks. A little bit more movement as you're moving towards that anterior tilt. It doesn't have to be your full range of motion. Right? Listening more for your sensation. If your sensation gets big, maybe slow down. Maybe make the movement smaller. Rolling back up the length of the sacrum. Again, just finding that cadence. A little bit of movement, sink back. Right, that the sinking back is where we start to shift the patterns, where we start to unwind them so we can find newer patterns. Moving up, shifting back, rolling up the length of the sacrum, lower back starts to come into the floor. And then one more time, rolling down, little movement, pause, movement, pause. Movement, pause. Right, ideally we want to feel when we're sneaking towards our end range of motion that it starts to soften, allowing us more play, less resistance. And then slowly find your way back to center. Letting everything settle, back of neck, throat, mouth, jaw. Okay, I just have my hands on the front of my hip. For some reason, that's just helping me kind of keep the pelvis somewhat balanced, right? So the movement is really simple. Okay, and one more time, we're going to take the turning the dial to the right and to the left. So tailbone, right, if we think of the top of the sacrum is the widest part and the tailbone is the narrowest part. Again, I'm going to turn, let's actually go to the left first. So I'm going to turn the tailbone to the left, a little bit of movement and pause. Little movement and pause. Little movement and pause. And you might feel that left hip coming up towards the left side of the ribs, the right hip moving away from the ribs. And slowly back to center. Little movement, pause. Little movement, pause. Little movement, pause. And then turning right. Little movement, pause. Little movement, pause. Little movement, pause. And little movement, pause. And slowly back to center. Movement, pause. And eventually you'll start to feel your body crave the pauses. Fold that into the movement. Let's go one more time to the left. Movement, settle, sink, soften. Little movement, settle, sink, soften. Movement, settle, soften. Coming back towards center, same rhythm. Looking for that, the undoing, the melting, the sinking back. And center. And to the right, turning right, sink, turning right, soften, turning right, sink, melt, soften, center, right, heading back towards center, movement, pause, movement, pause. Movement, pause. Good, right foot on the floor. Noticing the back of the pelvis, back of ribs, back of head, feet. Does one side feel different? Does it feel different when you first checked in? Sense of weight, more weight on one side? Or is there just a different feeling throughout one side? Pelvis or foot. Okay, left ankle and that right thigh, that right knee, or thigh just above the knee. Same, let's start with the anterior posterior tilt. So rolling down the length of the sacrum, from middle to lower, towards the tailbone. A little bit of movement, pause. Movement, pause. Movement, pause. I have my hands on the front of my hips, noticing how much effort and how much maybe I could possibly soften. Rolling up the length of the sacrum, movement, pause, movement, pause, movement, pause. Middle, upper, lower back comes to the floor. Finding those pauses. And again, rolling down, heavy bones. Heavy bones. Movement, pause. Movement, pause. And movement, pause. Other direction, moving more towards the posterior tilt, little movement, pause. Movement, pause. Movement, pause, movement, pause. And then let your pelvis slowly find its way back to center. Okay, tailbone. Turning towards the right. A little bit of movement and pause. Turning right, settle back. The weight of the bones in the spine, the head, and the sacrum. Turning right, sink, settle, soften. And center, coming back towards center, little movement, pause. Little movement, gentle movement, sink back even more. Notice the initiation as you move. And settle back again. Can you keep that softness? You start to turn to the left as you initiate and then sink back. And again, turn left. Initiate. Softly sink back. Turn left. And sink back. Coming back towards center, movement, pause. Movement, pause. Movement, pause. One more time, turning right. And turning right. And turning right. Good. Sinking in and down and back. And little movement, sink. And movement, sink. And movement, sink. And again, to the left. Notice when the body gets taut. Notice when it starts to work. Notice the amount of work. See if you can minimize it. And sometimes the body, there's just certain parts of the body that have learned how to overwork. And come back to center. Movement, pause. Movement, pause. Noticing. And left foot back on the floor. Notice back of pelvis, feet, ribs, head. So now I'm going to take my feet together, knees together, arms out to the side, straight out to the side, and I'm going to let my right leg cross over my left leg. So we're going to move a little more quickly, but we're going to keep that quality, the quality of watching the initiation, watching the amount of effort, folding those relaxed or melty places into the movement. So from here again, I'm going to do an anterior tilt. Slow, steady movement, as if you're finding both the movement and the pause. And slowly rolling up the length of the sacrum, finding that posterior tilt. A long journey up the length of the sacrum. One more time, slowly. Again, the more you drop back, the more you're able to compress the tissue on the back of the pelvis, as well as move the pelvis almost individuate it, separate it from the movement of the legs. Rolling back up the length of the sacrum. And then slowly to the center point. And settle. Okay, so my left foot is anchored, my arms are anchored, and I'm just gonna let my knees tip to the left, not very far, right? So if I feel the back of my pelvis, I'm gonna start to tip towards the left edge of the sacrum, over that edge of the sacrum, onto the soft tissue of the buttock. So even though I'm tipping left, my right thigh is still heavy on the left leg, on the right hip. Left foot heavy, right ribs heavy. And then slowly, slowly come back. Cross that center of the left buttock, left edge of the sacrum, center of the sacrum. Slowly to the right side of the sacrum, that edge, the right edge of the sacrum. Over that edge from the bone onto the soft tissue. All right, I'm close to the sacrum. I'm moving a little bit out towards the center, not very far. Again, thighs are still moving heavy towards the pelvis, even at this angle. Ribs heavy. Right hip heavy, left hip sinking towards the floor, not pulling, just heavy. And then let's go back again across the right butt, closer to the sacrum, over that edge, onto the right side of the sacrum, center, left side. Again, noticing the jaw, noticing groin, noticing what wants to work. Less is more here. Left side of sacrum over that edge onto the buttock. And maybe going out just a little further again, but the weight is still falling down towards your center, towards the center of the, right, the center of the femur, towards the center of the hip joint. Right leg and left leg. And then slowly back across the buttocks, slowly. My jaw always wants to help. My lower back wants to help. Slowly across the edge, left side, center, right side. Notice the sensation, right? I have a lot more sensation around my right side, my right sacrum. That sacroiliac joint, the edge between the sacrum and the hip bone. Notice your sensation level. Tipping right. Notice if the head is still. Notice if the head is rolling. Rolling back across the right hip slowly. Pour the weight of the legs deep into the pelvis, into the back of the pelvis. Over the right edge, right side of sacrum, center. Pause, notice. Let the legs get heavy, the inner thighs melt, the outer thighs, outer hips, throat, soften. Okay. Uncross the right leg, both feet on the floor and together. Good, let's take that left leg across. And again, slowly, right? So often when we initiate, there's more fire in the system, right? There's more effort. I can feel my tissue plump up and move away or move against the floor, moving the bones away. So I'm tipping to the right, right side of sacrum, right edge, buttocks. So moving slowly enough so the initiation is minimal. Again, notice sometimes letting the head counter roll eases the effort in the rest of the body. And then slowly rolling across the right hip, close to the edge of the sacrum, over that edge. Go slowly onto the edge, onto the center, towards the left side of the sacrum, towards that transition bone to tissue, center of the buttocks. And stay pretty close, right? We're asking again for rotation, and there's a weight load. So listening to your body, again, the counter roll of the head will help you minimize the strain, have that interesting counterbalance through the spine. Slowly rolling back, left side of sacrum, center of sacrum, right side over that edge. Again, play with the head counter rolling. Center of the buttocks. And listening to the sensation to feel you're moving towards your end range, softening around that end range. Softening the return trip, because that's the harder part. Using your breath listening, softening, sinking, settling. Right side of sacrum, center of sacrum, left side, over that edge, center of buttock. And notice how far out you could go and stay soft. And stay soft on the return trip. Heavy thighs, heavy sacrum, heavy spine and ribs. Noticing the places that want to overwork. Grip. See if you can smooth it out. Let the work disperse more through the whole body. Find your center point. Uncross the left leg. Feet flat on the floor. Again, noticing the weight of the feet, the pelvis, the ribs, the neck, the head, the lower back. Okay, so again, we're going to take a little bigger movement, but the same quality. So arms still out to the side, feet a little wider than hip distance apart, so just walk them out away from each other. So this time I'm going to let both knees drop to the right. Slowly, same feeling, center of sacrum, right edge, over the edge, onto the buttocks. And even though my knees are tipping quite out to the right, I'm trying to let the thighs settle back towards the pelvis. Right thigh, left thigh, heavy to the floor. And then slowly, again, pour the weight of the femurs into the pelvis to come back up to center. And then over to the other side. Right edge, right side, center, left side of sacrum, left edge, over the edge, onto the buttocks, moving a little further out. Left thigh heavy to the floor, right thigh heavy. And then again, hips heavy, left hip heavy, center of the sacrum heavy, right femur and hip heavy. Rolling. Across the sacrum, right edge, off the edge, onto the buttocks. Head counter rolling just to help keep the entire spinal column moving, right, with counter weight, counter rotation. Good, let the right thigh get heavy, left thigh get heavy, even press into the left foot just a little to keep turning the pelvis to the right. And then again, left hip gets heavy. Left thigh lifts, center of the sacrum heavy. Left knee heavy. Left hip heavy, other side. And using the weight of the bones almost as a rolling pin across the tissues. And head rolling right, knees dropping left. You can put a little weight into the right foot. And then let the weight drop back, sink back, heavy on the left hip, center of sacrum, right hip as the knees come up, head center, other side. Knees drop right, head rolls left, left foot gets heavy. And again, drop, right hip heavy as the knees lift, center of the sacrum heavy, left hip heavy. And one more time, dropping left. Heavy bones, heavy tissue. Stepping into that right foot as the pelvis keeps turning left, head rolls in the opposite direction. And then dropping back. As the knees lift, feel how the hips get heavy. Or as the hips get heavy, feel how it draws the knees up easily. Center, pause, breathe, notice. Okay, one more time. Let's let the knees drop right. Slowly, right edge, over the edge, right buttocks. Rolling across the buttocks, head counter rolls for a moment. Pressing into that left foot. And then I'm going to let my head roll back to center a little bit. I'm going to let more weight shift onto that right hip. And I'm going to just slowly slide or shifting more weight onto the right hip, letting that left foot start to slide along the floor, tracing around the right leg. And using your breath, using the slow movement, notice when you want to work, keep softening back. So left leg is tracing around the right leg towards the right hand, probably not going to find it just yet. And then slowly trace back, right? So this left leg is just tracing along the floor gracefully as the weight has shifted onto the right leg. Slowly left foot steps back where it was, the weight, right? The knees lift, the pelvis gets heavy, or the pelvis gets heavy, the knees lift. Through center, over to the other side. Letting the knees drop. Soft, supple tissue. Head counter rolls, a little weight into the feet, just a little. Just to actually shift more weight onto the left hip and then let that right leg. Some more weight comes on the left side. The right leg is freed up to travel. Right shoulder is heavy, head is heavy, left ribs heavy. And listening for the sensation in your body. Notice when it's too much. Notice gripping, resistance. Softening with your breath. Or just turn around and go the other way. Right leg traces back. And left hip heavy. Center pelvis heavy. Knees upright. Right foot on the floor. Pause. Breathe. Good. One more time to the right. Knees drop right. Get a little weight in that left foot to start. I'm shifting that weight onto the right hip and right thigh, letting the left foot get light. Again, the head can roll if that helps. Roll right or left. Left shoulder stays heavy, but not rigid. Right shoulder heavy. Right left leg exploring movement, listening, slowing down, using all that skill we learned. The movement and the pause, the softening back, folding that into the movement. Slowly untrace or retrace back to where you started, slowly, slowly. Good, right side of pelvis, center of pelvis, left hip heavy. Last time, knees drop left. Again, head maybe counter rolls, step into that right foot, shift the weight to the left leg, and then let that right leg travel. And I feel a lot more sensation on this side, so I'm just going to go slower. Focusing more on the pauses. And maybe letting the head roll with the right leg to the left. Looking for the ease. Looking for the softening. right? If we hit a lot of sensation, the body's going to react to that. So we're trying to move around the heightened sensation and work towards softening, right? Because the body's patterns will always be imprinted by the stronger sensation. Find your way back to center. Okay. All right. We have time to do one more. So let's let the knees drop right. Knees drop right, nice and slow. Again, I'm going to let my weight, just pressing into the left foot, shift more weight to the right. Again, I'm going to let that left leg travel. This time I'm only going to go about halfway. So the left leg and the right leg match somewhat. You don't have to match exactly. And then I'm just going to let that left leg rest towards the right leg. And then left arm slides along the floor. Your shoulders tight, it may hover above the floor. It's not important. It's more like a snow angel, right? We're going up, bringing the left arm alongside the ear, softening the back body. So I'm reaching with that left arm softly so that I can roll as I start to trace around the head to the front of the body, letting the spine, like letting the rib cage deform easily, letting the shoulders roll and fold as I reach forward, around to the right of the room, towards that right hand. I've rolled onto the right side of my body, so I'm on my right shoulder, my right hip, tracing around that right arm with the left hand, tracing towards the left knee, up and over the left knee, tracing along the left thigh, across the left hip, along the back body, towards the floor, nice and slow. And again, letting those ribs roll like putty, like dough, back onto the floor, left arm out to the side. Very gently, shifting the weight again so the left leg can travel back to where we started. Rolling right hip heavy, center of sacrum heavy. And let's move to the other side. So knees drop left. Again, pressing into the right foot, just to shift more weight onto the left foot. And then start to travel with that right leg. I'm just bringing the right leg closer to the left leg. So I can rest that right leg on the left leg. Good, and then let's travel with the right arm. So right arm, again, whether it's floating on the floor or tracing along the floor, moving up alongside the ear. There's a little bit of reach, but again, can you soften so the ribs can fold and roll, right? Rather than kind of ka-clunk. Rolling across the back of the rib cage, back of the shoulder, outer shoulder. Reaching past the left arm or towards the left arm, around the arm. Left shoulder, left hip, tracing around the left arm down towards the right knee, left knee up and over the right knee. Tracing along that outer right leg, outer hip, back of body, back to the floor, tracing along the floor, right arm straight out from the shoulder again, letting the head roll. The head likes to be bossy, or my head does. The right leg starts to travel back to where we started. And pause. Okay, take your feet or keep your feet wide, maybe walk them a little wider, drop the knees together, bring your hands onto your belly. And just feeling the breath move into your hands. Notice what still can soften. For me, it's my throat, jaw, cheeks, shoulders. Notice where it is in your body. And then grabbing your two blocks. And I'm going to use these blocks on the lowest height. And I'm going to angle them so that the part of the block that's furthest out from the center is angled towards the feet. And the part of the block that's closest to the center is angled towards the head. I'm going to walk my feet closer to my butt, lift my heels up. Right, my pelvis already falls into an anterior tilt, so then I'm going to scoop back into a posterior tilt, right, sitting bones and tailbone curl up into the backs of the legs, lower backs on the floor. And then I'm going to roll the lower spine up. Slide those blocks under me, right, so they're angled to match the sides of the sacrum. And then I'm going to settle my sacrum. So the blocks are actually right up close to the edge of the sacrum. They're still on the buttocks flesh. They can be either on the bone or on the flesh, depending on what feels more stabilizing. And then I'm going to let the hips really drop onto the blocks, and then lift the ribs up and slide the ribs up and away. So there's a little bit of lower back traction. And if you need to do that again, you can do that again. And so there's a lot of width and length in the lower back and in the belly. Just pausing here, letting your breath create the movement, create the rhythm through the body, the inhale and the exhale, almost like the tide rolling in and out. And just creating fluidity, movement. Movement through the whole body as the body starts to soften back again even more. The face, the throat, the back of the neck, the tops of the shoulders, upper back. And softening, feeling the hips really settle back onto the block. The outer hips, the front hip, the back of the hip. Again, you can have your hands on your body, right? When the elbows are wide, sometimes that helps widen the back of the rib cage, shoulder blades end up wide on the ribs as well. And then maybe for a moment, walk the feet a little further away from the blocks. And let's turn the feet towards each other, soles of the feet towards each other, and the knees open. And you can adjust, but sometimes having the feet closer in or further out, just they're different. They're going to affect the pelvis and lower back in a different way. So find the distance that feels good, that feels informative, important, helpful. Again, softening the eyes, the face. Good. And then letting the knees come back up together. Let's actually take the feet wide again, let the knees fall towards each other. They probably won't touch, but just tip in towards each other. And with the knees towards the center, the back of the pelvis now can also widen. Hands on the body, the shoulder blades are wide. Just feeling all of that tissue alongside the spine soften. Again, letting the rhythm of the breath create the movement, no matter how subtle. Good, and let's walk the feet under the knees and even closer to the blocks. Good, lifting the heels. Again, I'm gonna favor my posterior tilt, really flex the lower spine and pelvis. Press into the ball of the foot, slide the blocks out, and really slowly lay the spine down. So just laying the heaviness of the torso down, one section, one vertebra at a time. And then just taking the blocks, if you want, just placing them under your thighs. Letting your legs straighten. Your hands can continue to be on your body or off of your body, palms down or up. And noticing the rhythm of the breath. Noticing if there's more awareness in your thoughts or the sensation in your body. Again, there's no right answer, just noticing where your awareness is. Noticing how your feet are resting, your heels are resting, thighs, hips, ribs, shoulders, arms, hands. Just the connection to the floor. You always cover yourself. Keep the heat in. And just allowing yourself to be held by the floor, supported by the floor and the earth, right? If you think of the mass that's under you, the size, the density, does that help you soften back more? And in this space, allowing your body to settle, even allowing yourself to shed, right? As if with every exhale, you release what is no longer needed. Whether it's in your body, in your mind, thoughts. Not pushing things away, but allowing what is outdated, no longer pertinent or useful, or not even yours. Just slip away, slip out, and return either to where it belongs, to be composted, recycled, reused, different form of energy, Like creating room for you to become current. So what is present in your life now? And at the same time as with each inhale, a sense of nourishment, support, care. As if being filled up. In a sense, being called almost back to yourself. Whatever attention or qualities of you that have been distracted or displaced, just gently return back to you. Just feeling the quality of light in your room. Quality of space in your body. Care, courage, clarity. And gently, gently and slowly. Little movement in your fingers and toes, arms and legs. Go ahead and bend your knees. And gently roll to your side. And keep rolling as you draw yourself up to sit. And finding your seat with whatever support you need to maintain that suppleness. The palms together in front of your heart. And let's finish with the sound ma, M-A, ma. And whatever resonance that has for you. Mother Earth, Divine Mother, your own mother, or just nourishment. Inhaling. And just noticing the sensations in your body. And noticing thoughts, cadence, volume. And slowly opening your eyes, taking in the room. Namaste.